China flip-flops yet again. First, a Chinese Mid-General Luo Yuan cautions in India against increasing its military deployment at the border. Then the foreign ministry says the general's remarks aren't the official view, it's his personal remark. As it warns India, China embraces Pakistan, calls ties with the nation as sweet as honey. Now with A.K. Antony and Nawaz Sharif both in Beijing, is the dragon cruising up to Pakistan to take on India? Here's a report, take a look.
April 15, 2013, Chinese troops venture 19 kilometers into the Indian territory in Ladakh. July 4, 2013, China warns India against provoking new trouble by increasing its military deployment at the border, ahead of Defence Minister A.K. Antony's 4-day visit to the Dragon Land. The Indian government remains unmoved.
The Minister will handle it. If there's any need, he will ask us. Not going to make a statement that will create a problem for Defence Minister while he's there. He's gone there, he's talking. In fact, he will be taking part with in talks with the Chinese authorities, including defence authorities. I don't think we should say anything that comes in the way of our conversation.
The opposition too is cautious.
Internal security, national security या जो foreign issues policy है, वो paralyzed हो गई है, वो लकवाग्रस्त हो गई है. और ऐसी सरकार जो सरकार की इस तरह के कमजोर रुख के साथ होगी तो दूसरे देश इस तरह की भाषा बोलेंगे.
अपना विदेश मंत्रालय चुप्पी साधे हुए हैं.
हाँ, वो इस मौके पर चीन का जहां नाम आता है उनकी हालत बिगड़ जाती है.
हमारे देश में विदेश नीति नहीं है. रक्षा मंत्री या खुर्शीद जी जो बोल दे वही नीति हो जाती है. ये बात नहीं है. आज चाइना में हमारे देश का प्रतिनिधि जाता है और धमकी भरे बातें उससे की जाती हैं. इतना कमजोर इस देश को कर दिया गया है.
भारत की सीमा में की जो चौकसी है उसको और बढ़ानी चाहिए और चाइना अपने सीमा की रक्षा करे. भारत में कितने सैनिक भारत की सीमा में हों, ये उपदेश चाइना को नहीं देना चाहिए.
When Defence Minister Antony takes up the issue with the Chinese government, the dragon makes a U-turn. Chinese Foreign Ministry says that the generals on the same day China embraces Pakistan, calls its friendship with Pakistan sweeter than honey. As Pakistan Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif steps on Chinese soil to ink crucial strategic issues between the two nations, Sharif also aims to bail out his country's ailing economy with the help of the dragon. The big questions that arise are, will India ever talk tough with China, or will it continue fearing the fury of dragon fire? Can India ensure China and Pakistan do not unite to take on India? India has been trying to fix its military weaknesses on the India-China border for a long time. It has planned a program to induct an additional 1 lakh troops, raise a mountain strike corps, equipped for offensive operations across the mountainous boundary. Earlier, the Indian Army had vetoed China's proposal of a border defence cooperation agreement, asking India to freeze troop levels at the border. India made counter-proposals that went unheeded. Will the Defence Minister be able to get on the same page with China this time? Only time will tell. Bureau Report, News X.
The Chinese are at it again. At a time when A.K. Antony is in the People's Republic of China, a Chinese general issues a warning to India not to rake up the border issue and not to increase military deployment or military infrastructure along the border. Now, Luo Yuan is the general. He is known to be a jingoistic general, and even though the Chinese administration was at pains to explain that his views were not official warnings, it is a clear indication that the top Chinese leadership is back at playing mind games, something we know is a practice long mastered by the Chinese. Tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we discuss India's compulsions, if I could call it that, in adopting a rather lenient approach when it's dealing with our northern neighbor. This is the News X debate. I am Athar Khan. Joining me tonight will be Kamal Sibbal, former Foreign Secretary. Many thanks, sir, for joining us. Professor Madhav Nalapat, Managing Editor of the Sunday Guardian. Air Chief Marshal S. Krishna Swamy, former Air Chief of Staff, also joined me in the studio. Dr. Subramanian Swamy, President of the Janata Party, a gentleman who's just returned from China, from a World Peace Summit in China. Also joining us will be Professor Shrikant Kondapelli, China expert, also teaches in JNU, is a Professor of Chinese Studies, and Mr. Kamal Farooqi, leader of the Samajwadi Party. Many thanks all of you for joining us on the NewsX debate. I want to start with Mr. Subramanian Swamy, who's fresh from a Chinese visit. Now, this is nothing new, Mr. Swamy. I mean, the Chinese are past masters at this double diplomacy, they're playing mind game. This is just the latest. Now, what I want to know is a very simple question. Why is India's response always so meek, so weak? I know there are larger issues. We are coming to the larger issues, but before that, this audacity. When the defense minister is in China, I mean, I almost have a grudging respect for these people.
Well, I think the point is that we should have had one of our generals also speak in the same language.
And we do have one there. Dalbir Singh is there.
Yes. So we should do that, and then later on say that it doesn't reflect the official view. Chinese would respect that. It's got nothing to do with their wanting to cozy up with Pakistan. In fact, they have a problem with Pakistan. We have had for the first time a India-China discussion on what to do about terrorism, especially emanating from Pakistan, because they are now for the first time facing it in Xinjiang. So I do think that the PLA has now wants to assert it, because they've been in the background, now they want to come to the foreground, and that's part of it. But we should retaliate in the same language whenever they attack us, instead of saying no, I don't want to make things worse. What can they do to our defense minister? Supposing one of our generals says that lets out his team, nothing would have happened, would have enhanced our reputation.
Okay, Kamal Sibal, I want to come to you before I come to my guest in the studio, Professor Kondapelli. Kamal Sibal, you're a former foreign secretary. Now, Salman Khurshid, our external affairs minister, has very clearly said, let's not create a problem for the defense minister. I don't want to jeopardize his meeting with the defense minister of China and let him come back right now. Now, I remember, I think some months ago, the same thing happened, and India and Salman Khurshid and even the foreign secretary at the time, Nirupama Rao, had said there are bigger, larger interests with China right now. We shouldn't be jeopardizing our larger relationship with China. But should we take this line down, this sort of pinprick theory of China? They keep saying some things and keep these double meanings and this classic double Chinese diplomacy. Shouldn't India respond in kind? Shouldn't we give them a taste of Chinese medicine back?
Well, we have to act very prudently, maturely, carefully. I don't see anything wrong with what the minister has said, with the simple reason that the Indian defense minister is in Beijing. He is capable of giving a suitable response to the Chinese in private. And if he holds a press conference or there's a chance to meet the press, the Indian press for that matter, he can react to whatever he feels is worth reacting to. And it is wise, therefore, just when the visit has begun, not to create this kind of a problem for him. But having said that, what I find a bit, there are two things I'd like to comment on. One is the fact that Nawaz Sharif is in town at the same time as the defense minister. This is most unusual. And there is a clear political message in this, that China has absolutely no intention of in any way downgrading relations with Pakistan, on the contrary, strengthening it, and that India should accept the fact that these two relationships will remain separate, and India should not try and pressure China or try and persuade China that in the interest of a stronger India-China relationship, it should review its relationship with Pakistan. But then the third thing is that while I have a lot of respect for Mr. Swamy, things are that, as things are, our armed forces are under the control of the civilian government, unlike the PLA, which actually rules the country. The most powerful post in China is the chairman of the military commission.
So the situation is slightly different for both the countries. I understand that. But Professor Madhav Nalpat, a very brief comment from you. Kamal Sibal says that we should we should have enough faith in AK Antony to send the message across to the Chinese in private. Now the Chinese don't respect that. They don't believe in private messages. It was a very public message. Why should we give them a private message? Why can't we tell them publicly as well? Like Mr. Subramanian Swamy just said, we have a general there. He could have made a statement. Then our government could have said, oh, but this is not the official view. This is just his personal view.
Well, I think there is no doubt that if the PLA is a very negative force in India-China relations. As Mr. Sibal correctly pointed out, the Pakistan and China militaries are very close to each other, and unfortunately the Chinese military is doing a lot of the heavy lifting for the Pakistan military, in the sense that it is damaging severely the broader India-China relationship. Now, Nirupama Rao may talk about this broader relationship, but the fact of the matter is, it takes two hands to clap. It takes two to tango. And the PLA has been consistently trying to wreck a stable India-China relationship by jingoistic action on the ground and by this kind of jingoistic statements. Now, if this general's view was not an official view, and if there was really official disapproval of this view, we would expect the general to be very severely punished in the Chinese system. At the very least, he should be have his promotion withdrawn, or he should be, or some other punishment should come to him. If it does not come to him, it's a signal to other generals that you can make abusive comments about India and get away with it.
Okay, I highly doubt that whether he's going to get his promotion deleted or demoted. But I'll leave you to be the judge of that. Professor Srikanth Kondapalli, this double play, this jingoistic, provocative statement, coming it at a convenient time. AK Antony is right there, the government. The general says a thing, the government on the other hand rolls out the red carpet. They're sweet talking AK Antony right now, and I remember we had this conversation I think a couple of months back. This is nothing new. The Chinese are masters, the past masters at that. Now my point is that the border issue has been reached as well. Do you think that India should in fact wait, like Salman Khurshid wants us to wait? Or Mr. AK Antony in his private conversations, he's meeting the defense minister as well, I think tomorrow or day after he's meeting. Should he make it clear, should he lower his guard, or should he not give it back to them as they have done it to us?
I think the defense minister will convey the concerns of India in sharper tones than what has been the case. I think the major issue is whether we are prepared in defending our sovereignty and territorial integrity, whether we are making efforts effectively for the strike corps deployment, or the other aspects such as the air bases, advanced landing grounds, and so on and so forth. I think that's what is going to decide, rather than mere statements from Mr. Luo Yuan or any other.
But do you think India has been in the past also been sort of soft when it comes to dealing with China, because there is a larger trade relationship and we need to take care of that?
Definitely there has been an asymmetry in power relations between China and India. China is $8.23 trillion GDP, and while we are about 2 trillion. So there's a huge asymmetry between the two.
But they're also our largest trading partner.
That's right. That also creates a lot of stakes and uncertainties in terms of responding to each other.
So the government has reason to actually be very careful and not in fact go into
exactly.
linguistic mode.
Exactly.
Right. Okay. Mr. Krishna Swamy, Chief Master Krishna Swamy. Now the Chinese, I'm so sorry, I forgot, actually I said your name right, S. Krishna Swamy. I'm so sorry about that. But coming back to it, now the build-up itself. China has a huge advantage over build-ups. Now there apparently, and according to reports I was reading today, their build-up along the border is in fact almost saturated. They have a huge advantage over us. What is China really trying to tell us by saying don't increase your military infrastructure on the border? What are they really trying to tell us?
I personally feel that there is a disconnect between the political system and the military, whether it is designed to be so or purposely meant to be so, or in terms of sending a message, or this is what their structure is, or whatever you call it. There is a certain difference in approach between the military and the government towards India, and I believe that we are very different, and I don't think we should lose a balance. And I go with what Kamal Sibal said, that we manage things in a much more finer ways, And I don't think that it is appropriate to retaliate in words and so on. This is not the point in time to get into an argument or a discussion. Especially our minister has gone there as call it as their guest, and it will be very, very inappropriate. But if they have said something wrong, we should choose a place and time to so-called retaliate or say words of our choice and our choice of time.
What could be that?
I don't believe that it's the right thing right now to say anything very, very specific. Let them be. It's all right. But we believe that we have to. I believe differently. Is that we have to show it on ground. They've been watching us for a long time, and we have shown a certain pattern of behavior in this last so-called incursion of Chinese and the kind of debate that has gone on in India. There is a certain underconfidence in our tone when we meet such situations.
But is that underconfidence, exactly what I was coming for, is that underconfidence? Do you think that's warranted right now? Should we just let it go? Are we not, okay, militarily they might have a bigger army and they might have better resources, but should that underconfidence be there while dealing with them on the world stage?
That has nothing to do with a bigger army or a smaller army. It is to do with the attitude. For example, Pakistan is so much smaller, and we have a certain pattern of what you call dealing with them. And comes to Chinese, we seem to be slightly confused exactly how we should. The pattern what is emerging is the last of our reaction when there was incursion. It is a bit confused until we stabilized ourselves. I think we
managed to achieve that through diplomacy, not by making rhetorical or jingoistic.
Yes, it has got to. Diplomacy comes from military strength on ground,
right,
and the attitude and the posture of the government.
Okay. I want to go to Kamal Farooqi right now. I was speaking to Yashwant Sinha just a while ago, and he had some nice words for the UPA government and the lack of a foreign policy there. And he's saying that India has always been a soft power. He's saying things like whatever Salman Khurshid says becomes policy. There is no policy on the ground. Do you agree with your friend Mr. Sinha?
No, I may not agree with him in that way, but since we have the company of the great defense expert, that is one part, but somehow or the other we are unnecessarily trying to study from the Chinese point of view more than from our own point. But the message which is going for quite a long time, and China is taking advantage of it, in fact, that we are a bit soft. We are not showing it even on the ground. If we show it on the ground, let us not say anything on if Antony is there, and let us not, he is very right, let us not go into that verbal argument. But on ground we must show it that we are strong enough and we can have it. Okay. We don't want to. Why should we are trying to be very, very apologetic that this is this is their internal issue and why should we answer? Maybe we may not go in for argument with them, but on ground we must show we don't care about it.
Action speaks louder than words, and we should just do what we want, and we shouldn't get into a war of words.
No, I believe we should get into a war of words.
Yeah, why is that?
Because I think we have a moral problem.
The underconfidence Mr. Krishna Swamy mentioned.
Well, I mean, that is putting it very diplomatically. But I think the general public seems to think that we are afraid to take on the Chinese.
Or flex our muscles when they are flexing.
And they may have 4 times the GDP, but they have got 3 times the area to defend. And they got long logistics lines from Sichuan province down to the border, while ours is just next door. Assam and Arunachal, they are friendly areas, whereas they have to come through Tibet. I think when somebody speaks the way he spoke, it was not a language which I would consider even remotely dignified. I mean, you can make harsh statements, but you can't make thing of watch your language and so on. That I think should be retaliated by one of our generals and leave it at that.
But the panel also seems to think, sir, that there is a slight disconnect between the PLA, which is trying to derail the process.
No, that's all the more reason, because once you do it, then the political forces. Yes, I agree. I know very well that because we are having discussions with China on issues which it never used to have before, on Afghanistan, on terrorism, Pakistani terrorists, all these things we are discussing now, which China would never agree to discuss before. But I would say that even suppose that it is true that there is a disconnect, then all the more reason that you should give a stiff reply so that it strengthens the hands of the politicians in Beijing to try and bring the
PLA to heel. Okay.
That is what actually he's saying.
Yeah.
How to make a correction on their side.
Right.
If we allowed them to speak like this in two different voices and we are keeping quiet, it's not going to
So we should make it clear that we don't want to deal with the PLA. We will deal with the top masters of the country, which is of course the top Politburo and the Premier and the President. Kamal Sibal, you're a diplomat. I have a feeling you'll have a different take on this. But the underconfidence that Krishna Swamy mentioned, as well as Mr. Subramanian Swamy mentioned, do you think that, and also the disconnect between the PLA and the top leadership in China, Mr. Subramanian Swamy seems to think that we should engage in a war of words. Why not? If not now, when then? We should try and tell them that, look, we are with you politicians, not with the PLA, and this is your decision should come from your political leadership, not from the PLA.
Two, three things. One is that let's not speculate about this disconnect between the PLA and the political leadership. In my reckoning, without the backing of the PLA, the political leadership cannot survive. The Communist Party cannot survive. And therefore, if we think that we can play games and try to cozy up to the civilian government and through that put pressure on the PLA, I don't think we are going to succeed at all. Number two, when the Depsang incident occurred and the Chinese actually engaged in physical provocation on our border, how did we react? In fact, we began almost apologizing for the Chinese and tried to give explanation on their behalf, and then finally said that we didn't want to play the blame game. We never even asked them what happened, and that we are very happy that the thing has got resolved, etc. In other words, we gave the entire credit to the Chinese side to have resolved the issue in the manner in which we ultimately wanted.
Right.
Now, if we were so unsure of ourselves, so afraid of confronting the Chinese in face of a physical incident, I can't see us actually making strong statements just because a Chinese Major General, who is not even the Chief of the Army Staff, he's made some jingoistic statements which he's been making against the United States, etc., etc.
Yes.
Therefore, I don't think that we are right to be provoked by this when our Defense Minister is there, when we can, as a matter of fact, absorb the Depsang incident, to my mind, wrongly, and giving once again a signal to the Chinese that we want to follow a policy of in a way, appeasement, of not allowing the situation to deteriorate, to build up on the positives, to build a partnership between India and China, and look for all possible ways of projecting a mild and congenial image of China to the international community, just at the time when actually the international community is becoming more and more concerned about China's behavior.
Absolutely. There's an international coalition against China that includes Australia, Japan and the US. Professor Madhu Nalapat, why are we being apologetic for China?
Well, I don't think we're being apologetic for China, but I do agree with the points made that there is the Chinese military is a very negative force for the Chinese economy, and the reason for that is that for a long time Deng Xiaoping gave the slogan of peaceful rise, and Hu Jintao gave the slogan of harmonious society and a basically peaceful rise. Now you've got all these disputes, the South China Sea, you've got disputes between India and China, and the Chinese army is playing a very negative role in creating fear and tension all across its neighbors directed against China. In fact, thanks to the PLA, the United States has got a much stronger diplomatic position in Asia than it could ever hope to have, but for the fact that the PLA has been so aggressive.
Right.
So in my view, the greatest beneficiary of this kind of PLA activism is the United States.
Okay.
And again, I'd like to make a point. Several PLA officers have their relatives in the United States, have a lot of family in the United States.
Okay. Very briefly, I want to come to Professor Kondapalli, and I want to go very quickly around my studio guests, then we'll wrap up this debate. Does India's China policy need serious revision, or are we on the broadly on the right track, like Mr. Kavan Sibal was saying?
I think we are on the right track. I think we are putting across a few things, which includes the expansion of comprehensive national power. I mean, it doesn't dawn on us suddenly. We have to work hard for it. There's no point in making, slogans without the backing, without the hard power that you need. I think we are making efforts, and I think it's overall the India's policy towards China is with the territorial dispute as one of the areas of uncertainties in the bilateral relations, and the other aspects which have recently come up, for example, the issues like trade imbalance, issues like even
the South China Sea to some extent, I think.
Yeah, in terms of the investments in those areas.
Right.
So I guess we are doing well in the overall policy.
Okay. S. Krishna Swamy, do you agree with that? India is broadly on the right track, but when harsh utterances, like Mr. Swamy said, it was a harsh utterance. I mean, the language wasn't very nice. It was very coarse language and very aggressive language. Do we have to take that really? Shouldn't at least, not at this level of the defense minister or even the top diplomatic level, but should at least some response from New Delhi go to Beijing so that they know that we know what they're up to?
Well, there are two levels. One is at the diplomatic front. Every action is measured. Is there a strategy behind China where a general, a relatively lower ranking general, comes up with a jingoist statement? Was it pre-planned? Is it part of their so-called tactics or strategy, either to embarrass us or they're making a point somewhere else? This has got to be gauged, and the reaction has got to be appropriate. But the most important point is, I would like to say that we have to be very firm on ground, as Mr. Faruqi said, that our action on ground has got to be very firm, whether an incursion on ground or incursion in air. We are pretty strong. You know, it will be very unwise to believe that we are underrating ourselves, basically. Absolutely.
We are underrating
ourselves. We are very strong, and we can reach halfway across China. There's no problem. And our army is pretty strong. It's a matter of little bit of discomfort on our logistics, but more importantly is the top-down approach on dealing with certain emergence on ground, how firmly we should take. And it's a democracy, and therefore there is a direct management of the political level.
Absolutely.
And with the briefings and understanding to say that I'm quite used to this, and I've been a chief, and where we have a clear direction that if so-and-so happens, you shall do this and you shall do that. There are very clear directions.
We should be clear on our direction, what to do in certain scenarios. I have no time left. I have to wrap up, but I can't resist asking one question to Dr. Subramanian Swamy. I have 30 seconds, sir. A.K. Antony is in Beijing right now. Should he carry a huge stick but also carry lots of carrots?
There's no need for him to carry any carrots or sticks. The Chinese today have come to recognize, they may not openly admit it, that we are a much stronger country than they gave us credit for. When the economic reform started, they thought they'll all fizzle out. And then the way we have survived the international depression. So I think he will be respected for representing a big country, and any statements we make against the general here will not affect his position at all. Of course, the main thing is that they have a concern about our relations with the United States. There we should make it clear that in a dispute between the United States and China, we will be neutral.
Okay. On that note, I must end.
Just last word I would say. Chief has very rightly said, in fact, it is a demoralizing effect, not only on our people, but also on the defense personnel. Because we must try to give them the confidence. We are competent enough. We are not going to fight.
Stop underrating ourselves.
Stop underrating.
Stop underrating ourselves. Stop underrating ourselves. That's the key takeaway, of course. Broadly, we are on the right track with China. China is a tricky neighbor, of course. Everyone understands that. But we're broadly on the same track. No need to carry carrots or sticks. He will be respected, says Dr. Subramanian Swamy. That's all the time we have. Unfortunately, I must thank all my guests before I end this